everyone. Thank you for joining us on another episode of ThriveCAST. Joining me today is Ray Cox, and he is the Senior Vice President of Marketing for Highfill, which is a Carolinas regional engineering consulting firm in the water sector. So Ray has served as an engineer in water for more than 30 years, so he's very well experienced, and with the past decade really focusing on marketing in professional services. So I'm excited to have him on the show today to really talk all things water and provide some insight on company pursuits, win rates, business growth, and beyond. So Ray, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Shannon. I'm excited to be here.
So tell me a little bit about Highfill and what you guys do.
Well, as you mentioned, we're Carolinas based consulting firm. So we're in the water sector. We work primarily with public utilities and water, wastewater, stormwater, and we're engineering consultants. We have 5 offices in the Carolinas. So we're low 30s, 30 to 35 people right now, and we've been we're in our 21st year now as a company. I've been here for 20 of those.
So do you guys only focus on the Carolinas, or are you guys nationwide?
Now we are only in the Carolinas, and we Tyler and I were the original owners, and we've transitioned. We've got 9 owners now. Now, as we transition that ownership group, if some of those younger folks have the energy to go out to other states, then so be it. But we're only in the Carolinas for a very good reason. That's all we could handle.
But you guys are the water experts of both states. And so what do you think is the biggest challenges facing water and wastewater infrastructure today? Because it's a big deal, especially in those areas where water is scarce and they're using a lot of water reclamation to be able to help that water resource. What do you think is the biggest issue facing your industry today?
You're right. I think as we have our conversation today, the circular economy idea of water and all resources will work its way through. And what you mentioned is important to see. The Carolinas are not traditionally water scarce, but we certainly have had drought periods. And so you don't think you're water scarce until you go through a major drought, and then you realize how much you need water and don't when you don't have it, of course. And so I do think that I think there's several things. So my perspective, of course, is heavily bent toward the Carolinas and our experience there. But a lot of this is pretty universal in the water world. I think we have been facing for decades deferred maintenance on, a lot of our infrastructure is buried. It's out of sight, out of mind. You have politicians who want to get reelected who don't want to raise rates. So you have the people trying to manage these systems on shoestring budgets because they can't get the money they need to properly operate the systems. Now that's more in the past. I think that has been improving over the past 2 decades. So we're seeing less and less of that. People have become more educated and understanding about the cost associated with water infrastructure. I do think that the forever chemicals and microplastics, things that we're dealing with right now, are an issue that exacerbates what you're talking about with water reuse and trying to have this circular economy with water. Now we have on the raw water side that gets converted to drinking water, we have contaminants that we didn't know anything about a few years ago. Now we have the technology to detect those. And so we have to deal with those. And we're, of course, are also finding that those are on the wastewater side or the clean water side, the water reuse side. And really, I think what I would say about PFAS and forever chemicals is that there's a misunderstanding in the community at large about the role that water has. Yes, those chemicals are in the water. They are pretty much ubiquitous these days because we like our Teflon pans and we like our
plastics and
clothing and carpets that don't stain and all of that. But the method of exposure through drinking water is extremely low. In fact, probably 20% or less of your exposure to these chemicals is through drinking water. And so you're more apt to walk across a carpet and inhale PFAS at levels that you would never ingest from drinking in your whole life. And people don't understand that. So there's this heavy focus, and EPA has not helped with the MCL that they passed being so low. they've fed into this public misunderstanding of the water and how we can treat to remove these forever chemicals. Of course, the best thing is to try to keep them out, and there's a lot of effort in that regard. But
Hasn't technology changed the way municipalities approach water management? Isn't there things out there today that weren't available 10 years ago that make it a little bit easier to manage?
well, true. There are, of course, with increasing technology, we have better monitoring techniques. We can better anticipate what's coming and better avoid problems in a lot of
Yeah.
cases. We have more real time data that's more accurate. Remarkably, the technology that the basic technologies for providing safe drinking water and returning clean water to the environment have changed very little. On the drinking water side, you want filtration and disinfection at the very basic level to make water drinkable. And then on the clean water side, or cleaning the wastewater side, we're doing solid separation and pathogen removal, pathogen elimination to make it safe to return to the environment. Those concepts really have changed very little since we first started treating water 150 or so years ago. But we do have new technologies like membrane technology now that allows us to get very, very small particles out of the water. And so we do have tools to battle some of these things that we're dealing with these days.
That's good. So, what do you think? Is there like one piece of like outdated infrastructure that kind of keeps you up at night in the water industry? Because, I mean, like you said, stuff is old. So,
Yeah, there's no shortage of aging infrastructure for sure. That's true in the Carolinas. It's true in any place that has any history at all. And so not being a system operator, I don't really stay up at night too much about worrying about
learning
old
about infrastructure.
infrastructure, but I'll guarantee you that every operator does. They have something in their system that they know that's the weak link, right? And they've got to, and that keeps them up. What keeps me up is maybe outdated mindsets.
Mm.
We are, as you mentioned, technology is changing rapidly. It's growing. We have the technology to provide treatment. The water that we are returning to the environment is cleaner than the streams that we're returning it to. Yet there's some regulators that don't want to, that begrudgingly go forward, that can really hinder our ability to help these communities plan for the growth that they're already experiencing. Both Carolinas are just on fire as far as population growth, and it's real and it's not
Yeah.
slowing down. And they're having to deal with population growth with overtaxed infrastructure, and they really need to be able to have some innovative ways to deal with that. On the coast here, we don't really have the luxury of, it's very difficult to get a discharge permit on the coast, a discharge being discharged to a surface water, even though the water is extremely clean that we're putting out. We've got technology to do all that. It's very difficult to get a discharge permit. And I understand we talked about the circular economy with water. So, people ought to be pushing toward water reuse, and let's use water for irrigation. Let's use water, let's match the water to highest and best purpose. So yes, clean drinking water is for drinking and brushing teeth and bathing. And then we may have one notch below that for toilet flushing, and we may have one notch below that for irrigation, and so forth, so that we're really making the most of this resource. And that all looks really good with you and me sitting here talking about it. But when you try to make that work, it's millions and millions of dollars to do it. And the regulatory hurdles are huge.
Incredible. Yeah.
It is just very difficult to do. So it works really well in theory, but where the rubber hits the road, it becomes impractical pretty quickly when you start looking at costs and the effort that's required to go through the regulatory hurdles with no guarantee that it's ever going to be approved.
So you work, I'm assuming, predominantly with states, counties, cities, townships, so on and so forth, right? So there's a lot of, what do I want to say, political pushing and shoving when it comes to getting some of these bills passed, right? Do you find yourself as a principal of Highfill kind of getting wrapped up in some of that just simply because by default this is who you serve as a customer?
Well, typically not directly, but we are, first I'm an engineer. And so engineers people should understand this. Engineers take an oath, professional engineers take an oath to put the public welfare before personal gain and the public concern above all other considerations. And so, we take that very seriously. So this is not a self-serving thing. We are also environmentalists. We're not
Yeah.
trying to pollute the environment. We're trying to
You're trying to save it.
help our clients manage the growth and things that they're experiencing in a very responsible way. But we do so on the engineering side, and along with that, the water associations all have their own lobbyists who are in the legislatures pushing for whatever they're pushing for. I'm not typically directly involved in that, but we do see we get caught up in some of the back and forth, maybe ask some questions about how this is going to work, things like that.
Yeah, like if you have to go to the board of supervisors or you have to go to city council to present kind of the plan and the solution, right? So you're still dealing with some of those political dignitaries, but not directly when it comes to policies. I get that. That makes total sense. So if you could wave like a magic wand and fix one thing about the industry, what would that be?
All right. Well, we already talked about PFAS, so I'll skip past that one. What I haven't mentioned yet is flushable wipes. No wipe is flushable. Do not flush them down the toilet. It drives me nuts. You're creating havoc for
Yes.
your home utility or for your septic tank. They're not intended to be flushed, regardless of what the marketers for that company will tell you.
Yeah.
Do not flush them. So if I could wave a magic wand, it would put all the flushable wipes out of business. I'm sorry. Find something else to do.
I love that. So one of my clients is also a water district, and we did a whole campaign on just not using flushable wipes and how disastrous they are for the system. And like we gave real life examples showing how bad those flushable light wipes can really just expose the sewer system. Oh, it's profound. Yes.
It's terrible.
I love that magic wand.
Clogging pumps, creating fatbergs. It's a mess. It is a real mess.
Yeah, yeah, and all for convenience, right?
Exactly.
It's
And
crazy.
I'll do this as a PSA if you'll let me, Shannon. So there are products out there. If you need a cleanser beyond toilet paper, there are products like Balneol, and I'm sure there are others that you apply directly to the toilet paper. You don't need a wipe. You can just use the toilet paper with that lotion. You'll be fine.
I love that. That is a great PSA. So,
My
what
kids will be cringing when they see that moment.
they're going to be like, Dad, how embarrassing. How embarrassing. But you're in the water industry. This is what it's all about. So, yeah, it's really important. So, what led you to engineering and kind of what keeps you passionate about it, especially in the water industry?
I was a first generation college student in my family, and so I really had no idea what to expect or what I wanted to do. My high school guidance counselor said, "Well, you're really good at math and science. You should try engineering." I said, "Okay." So that's it. That's what led me to engineering. Now, what's made me stay is, we talked about this earlier. At our core, we're problem solvers, and we're really working to make life better, however you may define that, safer, more convenient, more sustainable for everyone. And specifically in the water industry, we protect human health and the environment. We get to do that every day. It's a really important role that we play, and it's very fulfilling for me. So that's what's made me stay.
That's awesome. So you're overseeing the sales and marketing side of things for your firm. How do you approach like business development in an industry where sometimes the decisions are often made years in advance? Like
Right.
how do you foster those relationships?
Right. Yeah. None of, I'm glad you said relationships, because none of our business is transactional. It is, we're not selling shoes that someone can return the next day if they don't like them. Generally, we're dealing with millions of dollars of infrastructure and either thousands to millions of dollars of fee. And these are projects that last multiple years, and they're huge investments of time and energy and resources and money. And so, no one is going to allow you to just walk in the door and based on, well, they look qualified, it just doesn't work. No one wins projects based on resume alone. You have to have the resume, but that's just your ticket to the dance. If you haven't built the relationships ahead of time, you're not going to have access to the work. So that's really that is our for us, we talk about marketing, and I stole this from David Stone years ago, but I didn't steal it. He gave it to me, but I give him credit. Marketing for us is all the things that we do to get work in the door, and it breaks up into 5 phases: positioning, which is who are we, what do we do, who do we do it for; branding, which is gaining mind share and gaining market exposure; business development, which is building the one-to-one relationships for the sake of doing business together; sales, which is responding to RFQs and that sort of thing, and pre-selling work; and then delivery. We have to deliver on what we've said we're going to do. We have to deliver excellent engineering every time. If any of those breaks down, we're in a mess. And so that business development relationship building that you talked about, that for us with a brand new client is a 2 to 3 year process before we are going to have any significant work with that client. It just takes that's just from history. It takes it. I've tried to find ways to shorten that, and I haven't. I'm sure there are people that are smarter and better than I am that maybe have found a way to shorten that, but that's the investment that it takes to really gain that trust and solidify that relationship.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, it is, and the amount of time it takes, especially in government, to be able to approve the funding to be able to do the work often comes in phases, right? So those phases are multi-year pronged approaches. When you guys go out for an RFP, are you usually going out as the prime, or are you as a sub, or is it a combo of both? And who do you partner with?
We are primarily the prime on the work that we go after. We're a little bit of an anomaly. Highfill is I told you, a plus 35 plus or minus person firm. In this water sector that we're in, most of the firms our size are really doing a lot of development work, private development work, site commercial development, that sort of, and we don't do any of that. We're really working with these utilities. And that's our competition largely is national and international firms that are many, many times our size. And so we're competing against them routinely. We also partner with them from time to time because we can provide. So you won't ever hear me bashing a large firm because they have their place in the market,
Right,
and we need them.
right,
Our clients need them and the expertise that they can bring. We don't have a PhD sitting in Kansas that we can bring in for some specific thing that we've never dealt with before,
right.
and they do. So kudos to them. But there are sophisticated engineering problems that we can help solve a little more nimbly. We don't have the overhead structure that they have. We're not some big corporate machine that takes a while to turn the battleship and all of that. We can move more nimbly and help out. So we really work lockstep a lot of times with some of these larger engineering firms. There are a handful that we have that either we're a prime for or they're a prime for us. And it really depends on who has that primary relationship with the client.
Yeah.
And it's working together to make sure that we can bring the resources to solve that client's issue.
So what do you think? I mean, yes, you are known for all sorts of water projects, but what do you think sets you apart from your competitors where you guys are getting that repeat business? Is
I
there a
really,
differentiator? Maybe there
yeah,
is a differentiator.
it is. This may not resonate, but I really feel like our differentiator is our focus on service. We only hire what we call net givers. I've just for whatever reason I was behind the times on, is it Bob Berg, the the author that wrote the Go Giver series. I've just listened to those this year. I didn't even know anything about them. We've been calling ourselves net givers for a decade or more, but that's who we hire. We kind of discovered that around our 10th anniversary, that we're not just into customer service. We're into these are people who are volunteering in water associations. They're giving to their communities. They're doing volunteer work out in the communities in the water sector. These are people who are passionate about giving and serving, and that's really what we bring to the table. We advertise our slogan is engineering is our profession, service is our passion. And it's pretty easy. If we don't live up to that, it's pretty easy to call BS on that, So we wear that on our shirts, it's on our website, and it'd be pretty easy to call us out on that if we weren't doing that. And I really think that mentality of being first service focused is a differentiator for us. Our people know what it's like to make sure that someone's taken care of.
And you want to talk about, the circular circular economy. I mean, that in itself kind of speaks volumes, right? When you're talking with when you're talking with customers, and your people are not only doing the work, but they're living the work, they're dedicating their time to the work, they're doing extracurriculars to support the work. I mean, that's circular in itself. So that's definitely innovative,
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Thank you for that.
So how do you attract and retain top engineering talent, especially in such a competitive space? And I want to preface this because the vast majority of the firms that I've spoken to on this podcast series have all said that retention has been incredibly difficult. Finding the right people has been incredibly difficult. How have you guys overcome that issue?
It's well, we've had our spell with that as well. We haven't been immune to that. We did before COVID. We had never lost more than one or maybe two people in a single year. Post COVID, we got hit in that same shuffle that I think everybody got caught up in. We lost about 40% of our workforce over the next, and from maybe mid 22 to mid 23, something. No,
Yeah.
is that right? 21
Yeah.
to 23. Anyway, somewhere in that ballpark. Can't be 23. It had to be a year before that.
Yeah. 20 to 22. Yeah.
Yes. And so we were um, really scrambling, figuring out what do we have is there a cultural problem here all of a sudden, or what's going on? I mean, we were losing. We had people that were getting out of engineering altogether, and people that just decided they wanted to do something else. I mean, it was crazy. Now we did manage to hire a bunch of people during that time as well, but on the whole, we lost experience. So the people that we hired were less experienced than the ones that we lost, of course. And that put us in training mode. But I think that's one of the things. We never floundered from our principles, our core values. We've held true to those, and we are investing in the training. There's this gap across the engineering world right now of mid-level, 15-year experience professional engineers, project managers. They're just missing. If you see one, they are so wrapped up with the company that they're working for is trying so hard to take care of them that it's very difficult to, and we don't go after other people's
Of course.
employees anyway, certainly not intentionally, but so
It's
we've had to
everybody,
invest in training.
all of the firms I've talked to have said the same exact thing. And those in those mid-level management, 10 to 15 and even up to 20 years of experience has been really hard to fill that gap. So that mid-management level has been really difficult to find. And it is happening industry wide. And everybody has a different way of going about how they're trying to retain and attract new talent. So it's interesting to see what you guys are trying to do to make that work.
We are, one of the things that we're doing that I don't mind sharing, because I borrowed this was not my idea. I learned about this in another podcast, but the concept was pretty sound, I thought. And it's there's a book called The Alliance that talks about tours of duty. And I can't remember the guy's name who wrote it. I'm sorry, but he's one of the founders of LinkedIn. And basically you acknowledge when people are coming on board, the likelihood of them staying for 30 years this is not boomer generation. That's not likely that's going to happen. So, okay, let's agree that for this finite period of time, let's say 2 years, that we're going to get you from here to here. This is how you're going to benefit. Here's how the company is going to benefit. We're going to be very transparent. As we approach that 2-year period, either we'll help you find the next tour of duty with our company, or we'll agree to part amicably, and maybe even we'll help you with one of our friendly firms to find something else that you're interested in doing, and we'll part ways, and we'll both be better off for it. So that for me really resonates. We're just now working out the details and trying to implement that, and we're trying to do it as quickly as possible because I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, Reid Hoffman, he's the one who wrote.
There you go.
Yes.
Thank you.
He's the one who wrote The Alliance, Tours of
Thank
Duty.
you.
I haven't read the book, but I've heard amazing things about it. So I love that you're using that as a premise to be able to build something that's a little bit different and unique from everyone else, which I think is really important because you have to differentiate yourself in this industry, and this is the way you do it. So what is one leadership lesson you've learned over the course of your time that you've learned the hard way, that you were like, a hard lesson learned. I'm never doing that again?
Are you familiar with the care and feeding of monkeys? Do you know that term? No?
No,
Okay.
no.
Back in the 70s, and I think it was repeated in the 90s, there was a Harvard Business Journal article that was sort of a tongue-in-cheek story about a manager and his direct reports, and how really the roles were kind of flipped. And at the end of the day, there was a Saturday that the manager is going into the office to try to tackle all these problems that he's picked up from his direct reports, and he sees them out on the golf course on the way in, and he's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? But the premise is that not to pull someone else's monkey on your back, to help them deal with their monkey, and the analogy is the monkey on your back, the problem that you've got to solve, but to help equip them to deal with their monkey without taking that monkey and putting it on your back, because now you've got so many monkeys, you can't deal with all the problems. So, I would like to say, so I have learned that the hard way, but I still catch myself in that scenario, and I have to stop and say, all right, I'm not going to fix this for that person. I need to help them find their way into fixing it and let them retain ownership. I've just done it today, as a matter of fact, before our call. So I'm still learning that lesson the hard way, apparently.
You can't be all things to all people, right? And at some point, you have to kind of back away and say, sometimes the hardest lessons are learned on your own. And while I don't want you to make mistakes, the mistakes sometimes often make you better, right? So I can totally relate to what you're saying, because I too am that way. You must be a type A personality.
It's a pretty good guess.
Yeah. So how is there like any like exciting innovations or water engineering um things that are happening that are really new to the industry that's going to kind of change the way the industry manages water that you guys are looking into or learning more about?
I do. There are a few things that are there's so much going on these days with technology advancing at the pace that it is, but to try to narrow some things down, I think um, there are things like smart meters, water meters, advanced meter, AMI. I can't think of what the I is, but anyway, the ability for these utilities to monitor water usage at the individual meter level and know where they have a leak and what's going on, and be able to send. Our pool had developed a leak I didn't know, and I got a letter from our utility saying, hey, your usage is way up this month. You might want to get things checked out. I appreciate that. I don't want to be wasting water, first of all, and I don't want to be wasting money either. So that's pretty cool. We talked about PFAS and how ubiquitous it is and how pervasive it is in the environment. And I've seen some research in the past year or two about some pretty cool technologies for dealing with that, for removing it. And of course, once you remove PFAS, these chemicals are so hard to break down. A lot of times you're removing it with something like granular activated carbon. Then you've got to regenerate the carbon. And what happens, using heat, extreme heat to break the PFAS down. I've seen some others that are using, I'm probably going to mess this up, but it's a microscopic boride crystal where they use a foam with air bubbles to remove the PFAS from the water column, concentrate it, and then they're running it through this reactor that uses these boride crystals to break the molecules apart. And so you're releasing harmless elements into the atmosphere then. And so that's it's way above my head and above my level of comprehension. I'm by no means a professor or a lab rat, but it's really cool technology and fun to see that people are really rising to the occasion.
You brought up something that's really interesting, because something else that's also really important and top of mind is climate change. And how is climate change impacting water resources? Is Highfill Engineering adapting to any of that climate change that's out there, or is that just kind of par for the course?
Yeah, no, we definitely are. It is. I mean, I think it is becoming par for the course that you have to build that into the design. Of course, we're in the Carolinas. We're obviously two east coastal states, and
Right.
so sea level rise, the hurricanes, the more and more frequent extreme weather events that are coming along. You can't ignore those things, and so
Right.
So for us, it's primarily flooding events that we're trying to help guard against. Some wind involved. We don't do a lot of vertical structures that are very tall. Ours are mostly tied into to the infrastructure that we're working with. But yeah, we have to think about that. Is the floodplains are moving.
Everything's moving.
What used to be a 100-year storm is now a 10-year storm. I mean, things like that. It's just this extreme weather is with us, at least for the foreseeable future, unless we can reverse some things.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Are you guys using any sort of AI in your day-to-day business that's helping you kind of shape the future of water or wastewater treatment?
I want so bad to say yes, yes, we're on the cutting edge, but we are using AI, but in some very mundane ways right now,
Yeah.
like helping us with some of our marketing stuff, helping us ferret through records and with meeting summaries. We're still figuring out how we can apply AI. We're excited about it, and we're trying to learn ways to do that. We have some folks looking into and then some ways that we can use it more effectively, but we're really just getting started on that. So I wish I could tell you, yeah, we're ahead of the curve, but we're not.
I'll check in with you like next year or the year
Great.
after, and then it'll be a completely different story. We'll
Let
be having a different conversation.
let's hope. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is there any particular project that Highfill has done that you are just really proud of and just want to tout?
Let's see. It's been a few years since I was heavily involved with the project side of things. So we had a project up just north of where I live here in coastal North Carolina that where we helped. It's a pretty rural county, and or at least they've got a beach side which is pretty heavily populated, and then it's rural, the rest of it. And so we helped them put in about 80 miles of water mains and an elevated tank to be able to serve some of that rural population and help them qualify for some grant money to make it affordable for their population. So that was probably around a $19-20 million project just a few years ago that we helped them do. And that's one that kind of stands out for me. That I was the project manager of that one. Well, gosh, so it's been longer than that because I haven't done project management in a while. But that's one that stands out.
But
But
it's
for
still a
me,
good one.
honestly, my project is Highfill. What I'm trying to do at this stage in my career, make sure that Highfill continues its role in taking care of our clients. Growth is fine. We've grown organically from the start. No issue with that. In fact, we need to grow to provide opportunities for our people, but that the focus remains on that service aspect and taking care of these clients and particularly in the Carolinas. And then if the young folks want to take it beyond that, that's great. And I'm really proud of what this company has been able to accomplish in that realm in the Carolinas. I feel like we're well respected, and I think we do pretty good work for our clients. So thank you I didn't mean for that to turn into a shameless plug, but I
No,
guess that's
but
where it went.
it's really good though. I mean, because and I really only have one other question for you, and it kind of ties into that is giving, young engineers one piece of advice that can help them grow, from Highfill, what would that be? What would that piece of advice be for them?
And honestly, I would give them the same advice I give to my kids or I would give to anyone, engineer or no. My personal motto is be the best me I can be. And that's the advice I would give is be the best version of yourself you can be. Strive to be, better a person, engineer, friend, spouse, parent, colleague, day than you were yesterday, tomorrow than you were today. And I've done some talking with young professionals and I discourage them from if you're looking outside, if you're looking at other people and comparing yourself, you're always going to find someone who's much better or much worse at something than you are. It's
Yeah.
really not helpful. I mean, if you want to take some aspects and go, oh, hey, I could really work on that. I admire that. I want to work on that. That's okay. But to say, gosh, I wish I was that person or I wish I was that good at that. That's really not helpful. Just focus on improving day over day, week
Yeah.
over week, year over year.
Just be a good human, I mean,
Exactly.
it doesn't require a lot. It takes as much energy to be nice and kind and respectful as it does to be rude and mean and cruel, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
put your
In
energy where
fact,
it counts.
it requires less energy to be that way, and then you feel better afterward. I don't know. So, yeah,
Couldn't
I
agree with you more.
I
I
can't
couldn't agree with you
understand all
more.
the negativity out there. I try not to ascribe to it at all. I try to separate from it.
I couldn't agree with you more. So, Ray, what is your website address where people can find more information about Highfill Infrastructure?
We are HIEPC.com. So that's Highfill Infrastructure Engineering Professional Corporation, HIEPC.com.
Got it. And are you on LinkedIn? Can people find you on LinkedIn or?
Yes, I am on LinkedIn. And if you're into old guys playing music, I'm on Instagram as well as that would be Fame Nor Fortune. That's a
All
Nor,
right.
not or.
Got it. So you're a musician too.
Yes, I love to. I perform around 30 gigs a year, bars and restaurants and stuff. So it's a lot of fun. Mostly here in the Wilmington area, sometimes, but usually just in the Carolinas.
So off topic a little bit. Do you play guitar? Do you
I
play
play
bass? Okay.
guitar and sing. Yeah, yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Solo deal.
Well, I'll have to go check that out after this podcast. Ray, it's been really great chatting with you, and I wish Highfill Infrastructure much success in the future.
Thank you, Shannon. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you having me.